How many of the Blackhawks prospects project to be stars? How about members of this year's NHL draft? We'll find out from Byron Bader of Hockey Prospecting next, and we'll get to the remainder of your Mailbag Monday questions. Coming up next on CHGO Blackhawks. Welcome into the CHGO Blackhawks podcast. Hope you're having a great Tuesday on this steamy day in Chicago. I'm Jay Zawaski with Mario Tirabassi. Katie Duffy's running the show today. We've got a big one for you. We've got to wrap up. I said the remainder in the cold open. There's no way we're getting to all of your mailbag questions, but a lot of your mailbag questions we will get to. Yeah. We're also going to welcome to start the show Byron Bader from Hockey Prospecting. But before we do us a favor, hit that like button for us. Make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube page as well. And if you're listening on the podcast, we love you and thank you. Make sure you're following or subscribed on your favorite app and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And like we like to say once or twice a week, feel free to roast us in the review. Just make sure it's 5 stars.
Yeah, that would be
5
nice.
stars. These guys suck for the following 50 reasons. That's fine as long as it's 5 stars.
As long as it's 5 stars.
That's all that matters. So we would appreciate that very, very much. All right, let's bring in our guest, Byron Bader from Hockey Prospecting. You can follow him on Twitter at Byron M. Bader. Byron, thanks for taking the time, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on.
I always enjoy watching your stuff on Twitters when you put out your hockey prospecting graphics. For those that are unfamiliar with your process, can you break it down a little bit for our viewers and listeners?
Yeah, so essentially what it does is it basically, all these prospects that are drafted every year, they can come from, anywhere from 25 to 50 different leagues. And every league sort of has a different translation in terms of how production or scoring translates to the NHL. So basically what it does is it takes all these different leagues and then they all have, these different translations in the background, and it basically shoots out one standardized number, which is called an equivalency. And essentially you take those numbers and what the model does is it basically goes back for the last 30 years and it looks at how players sort of score these standardized scores, and they kind of hit these different thresholds, and then how they move through them and at what age is pretty indicative of, first off making the NHL, but also those ones that turn into the stars or the superstars in the NHL. So we're talking, the kind of outlier point producers in the NHL. So yeah, basically taking this data, there's these different archetypes of players, and there's certain types where, 9 out of 10 times when they look like that and they kind of progress like this, they turn into a star or superstar in the NHL. And then, there's ones where every once in a while, maybe if they look like this, they turn into a star. And then there's ones where they almost never turn into stars. And that's, most of the players drafted every draft every year, because, only about 25% of them make it. So that's basically what it's doing, is it's kind of taking these hundreds of prospects that you're looking at every year and sort of giving them one standardized score. And then you factor in their size and their age and all this type of stuff. And then that's kind of what the predictive model of hockey prospecting is doing, and then tracking these players 3 years after they're sort of drafted and seeing how they progress through these different thresholds.
Well, the guy at the top of this year's draft class is Matthew Schaefer, and I think for argument's sake, he's unanimously the top guy, but may not go number one. He seems like an interesting case for your model because his draft year was such a small sample size. And how much does prior production or anything like that factor into what you look at for his draft year comp? Because looking at some of the guys that you have listed here for those comparables, guys like Sam Dickinson and Olin Zellweger in recent years, kind of compare. How do you see that kind of playing out for Schaefer, where he didn't really have that sample size in his draft year that you'd hope to see from a guy who could go number one?
Yeah, so normally, especially those first overall guys, like you do see a really good sample set. You normally see at least kind of 40, 50 games out of him. With him, he only got 17, but it wasn't like, kind of like a nagging injury that could play a factor or shouldn't later on. It was like a freak accident. I think he broke his collarbone or something. Like, it's not like that, that Sam Bennett thing where he had like that shoulder issue when he was getting drafted. And it was kind of like, well, how bad is it? We're not really sure. Or like Caden Lindstrom last year, he had like that back issue, I believe, and you weren't sure how bad it was. Well, he ended up missing the whole post-draft year. So it's not really that. Like, he's basically should be all healed up and ready to go for next year. And yeah, like, it was a small sample, 17 games. But when you look at that, like, obviously you want a bigger sample, but the way he was producing in that small sample, he's very, very young. He's like 10 days away from being eligible next year. And he actually has like the highest equivalency ever for such a young D-man. I mean, again, it comes in 17 games, but so maybe he doesn't keep up that same kind of extraordinary pace. But even if it's, 80% or 90% of that, which it probably would have been because it seemed like he was just kind of finding his groove. It wasn't really, taking his foot off the gas at the point that he got injured. So even if it's 80, 90% of that, like, this is still a really, really solid prospect that should certainly go in the top 3 or top 5.
Byron, before we continue, can I ask you to scoot to your right like half a foot? You're just slightly out of our frame. That's perfect. That's perfect.
Nice.
There we go.
There we go. Nice and centered.
We don't want a Kyle Davidson situation. We had him on after the Bedard lottery, and it was right down the middle of his face. So we're all good.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I never know where I'm looking on these things, and I have when I'm thinking off to the side. So yeah.
You're perfect right now.
We're all good.
Thank you. Who in this draft is your model really bullish on in terms of, we already talked about Schaefer, but I think Hawks fans are really looking at forwards, Misa, Hagens, Frondell, Desnoyers. Who does your model really like?
Yeah, so all 4 of those, it's relatively or extremely high on. Frondell really bubbles to the top. He essentially looks the best out of the entire draft class. And when you look at it, he comes from this secondary league in Sweden, which is really underrated. Like, it actually has like a really high equivalency, but it's kind of thought of, well, it's not the SHL, so it's not quite as good, but it's basically on par with, when you look at the data and in the model, it's on par with like a league with like the Liga in Finland. So, he had really high production there. He's relatively young, born in May. He had really good production in the J20 last year as, in his D-1 season. So he actually bubbles right to the top. Not a whole lot of comps because, he kind of has this, like really high production in a pro Euro league as a younger prospect. It doesn't happen that often. So like his only like dead on comparison is Barkov, who's ended up pretty well. It was kind of a surprise when he was taken second overall in 2013, but he's really worked out to something special. So it could be something like that. And then you look at other younger players who came from the same secondary Swedish league that were kind of a similar birth date. Like, they're not born in October, December, or January. They're sort of born in spring or summer. You basically have Pasternak and you have Nylander. So you look at all that, like, he's got good size. It's not like he's 5'8" or something. You have to kind of overcome that size. Like, he kind of has everything. He seems really underrated to me, and he bubbles to the top for sure. Misa also looks phenomenal. I mean, he had an equivalency in the 50s in his draft year, which is pretty uncommon. That doesn't happen very often. So, I mean, you look at players that he compares to, you're looking at like Adam Fantilli, you're looking at Will Smith, a guy like Marco Rossi, but Misa has much more size to him, and so that helps. So yeah, he looks great. Like, I imagine he's going to go in the top 3, and he'll be very warranting going in that position. And then a guy like Desnoyers, he looks great as well. He's quite young, born in April, I believe, and he has certainly a better equivalency than most, and a high equivalency, but like it's not at that top level yet. But he's so young that he could probably go back to the Q next year and then take a big step, and then jump his equivalency up and his probabilities way up. And players that kind of look like that: Matthew Boldy, Matt Barzal, Logan Cooley, even Nathan MacKinnon kind of looked like that when he was drafted. Of course, Nathan MacKinnon was basically almost as young as you could get, so a little bit of a difference there. And he doesn't have the speed like MacKinnon, but yeah, so they all look great. Hagens is the one interesting one because, at this point last year, so in his D-1 season when he was coming out of the U.S. development program, like he looked like one of these, I don't know if you've seen it on Twitter where I talk about these guys that are these kind of like certain superstars. Like they have these really high equivalencies in their pre-draft year, and then they kind of take another step forward in their draft year. And essentially it's having an equivalency of 40 or more in your pre-draft year and then something over 50 in your draft year. Every single one of these guys who has ever been drafted has turned into a star. And I think, like 19 out of 20 or 9 out of 10 have turned into sort of like a point per game superstar level. You have like Jack Eichel, you have Connor Bedard look like this, Jack Hughes, Sidney Crosby, Connor McDavid. You have all these players. So he was trending that way. And he was trending that way early in his college season this year. Like I'd say by about Christmas time, he was kind of, hitting that mark that I was sort of looking for. But then he kind of trailed off at the end of the season and, still good numbers. But for that guy that's being talked about as like a first overall, potential first overall pick for a few years and then to fall off like that, it was a bit concerning because you look at, there's a few guys that have kind of done that, worked out to be pretty good players. Like Daniel Cleary is one from way back. Sergei Samsonov's another one. Like really good players, but did you get that kind of superstar level player that you're looking for? So, he's a bit of an oddball in the model, but like he probably goes back next year and has a huge year for Boston College. But that was kind of a funny one, and you could kind of see it in the scouting reports too. Like early on last year, like it was basically like him and Schaefer going first overall. Who knows where, which one, and then early in the season, he was still talked about in that first overall sort of echelon. And now at the end of the year, like you look at all the major draft rankings and he's not really first on any of them. He's kind of in that third, fourth, fifth hole. So yeah, he's sort of a really interesting one. I'm curious where he goes.
Well, looking at, the guys that the Blackhawks already do have, a couple of guys not named Connor Bedard that I think a lot of people are interested in how your model kind of views them as they go through. Frank Nazar had his first full professional season this year, 50 games in the NHL, and it looked like as he progressed through the end of the year, he was getting better. When you look at him year over year, like draft year, then he basically loses a year at Michigan, comes back, has a pretty good sophomore season. When you look at his progression, is he kind of on that pace that maybe your model expected, or how does that kind of pair up to other players in the NHL? Because I think when I look at him, I kind of think of like, could his ceiling be at the most optimistic, maybe a guy like Braden Point?
Yeah, so his he looked pretty good when he was drafted, and then like you said, he kind of had that injury-filled year in his post-draft year, and his equivalency sort of dropped back, which is never a good sign, whether that comes from having an injury or it just comes from not making a step forward. Like either way, it's, that's a big development year for him, and kind of losing that or taking a step back like that, like never really helps your cause when you look back at all the players that have sort of done that. And then, his next year, he kind of takes a nice step forward in college, but he basically lands equivalency-wise or translation-wise, like where he was in his draft year. So he's not making those big climbs yet, but now in his, 3 years removed from his draft year, he goes to the AHL, he has a really good season. And that's where I have his translation coming from, because it was better than the NHL, and I always take the one where they show best when they play in multiple leagues. And then he goes right into the NHL, and he kind of has this really nice season. So I would say that he doesn't necessarily look at all like a guy who tends to turn into a star, those kind of, putting up a solid 60, 70 points plus per season. He doesn't look like that really at all. He looks kind of more like, Kailer Yamamoto is a really good comparable for him, where he kind of levels off and then he takes that big step forward in his D+3 season, but he's an older prospect, so his runway is kind of a lot less than, say, somebody born in like August or whatever. So I would say he probably nets out as more of a really solid kind of 2 or 3C that maybe puts up, 40 to 50 points a season. Maybe has a couple high points where he gets, to that 60, 70 point, but like not over his career would be my guess.
Well, let's talk more about the Hawks prospects. We got to hit the break zone here real quick. Do us a favor, hit that like button. More with Byron Bader coming up next on CHGO Blackhawks. And we've been telling you about our friends at Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary for some time. Sunnyside is your home for judgment-free cannabis shopping, where all kinds of visitors are welcome to explore, discover, and purchase a wide array of high-quality products. They have everything you need at Sunnyside to elevate your summer. We've been telling you about our friends here for a long time, and it can be intimidating the first time, maybe the second time, third time you go into a dispensary because you don't want to look like an idiot. You don't want to, buy the wrong thing and spend money you don't have and not like the experience. The people at Sunnyside, they're going to help you every step of the way. So you say, hey, I'm having trouble sleeping, or my anxiety is really high, or I just want to be more social. What can I get? What can you suggest? And the Sunnyside people will get you squared away. They've got great brands like Good News and Mindy's. Those are my two favorite. And also Cresco and FloraCal for that great flower. Visit sunnyside.shop for bright buys every day, including 50% off your first 3 online purchases. Yes, that's 50% off your first 3 online purchases. Enter promo code HICHGO at checkout to qualify. Exclusions apply. Sunnyside Cannabis Dispensary. Bright buys every day. Only for 21 plus or Illinois MedCard holders. And by the way, if you've already used that original promo code and you still want to shop at Sunnyside, use the promo code CHGO50, CHGO50 for 50% off one Cresco Labs brand item. That's a great deal. Take advantage.
Nice. One thing you never want to hear while you're out there in the world, out in the wild, is you stink.
Oh, I get that a lot.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it's not about your body odor. And that's where our friends at Mando come into play. What makes Mando unique from other deodorants? Well, it's because Mando is a whole body deodorant, safe to use anywhere on your body, from your pits to your thigh folds, your belly button to your feet, and everywhere in between that your imagination can take you. Mando is there for it. Created by a doctor who saw firsthand how normal body odor was being misdiagnosed and mistreated, Mando is there to make sure that you smell good, not just good, great, from head to toe. You can choose from a variety of fresh scents like bourbon leather, clover woods, Mount Fuji, or Pro Sport. It's clinically proven to control odor better than just a shower and soap alone. Mando's starter pack is perfect for new customers. Comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice, like the mini body wash or deodorant wipes, and free shipping. And as a special offer to our listeners, new customers can get $5 off that starter pack with our exclusive code CHGO. Use that at shopmando.com. That's SHOPMANDO.com. Support our show. Tell them that we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando.
All right, back to our guest, Byron Bader from Hockey Prospecting. One guy we're really trying to figure out is Artem Levshinov. Pick number 2 last year. We're big in comparisons. Like, who is this guy? What kind of NHL player is he? Seems kind of like a unicorn the way he plays. And I should also point out, if you don't know this already about Hawks fans, there's a big faction that wanted Demidov instead. So let's first talk about Levshinov, and then I guess we could probably compare where you see Demidov finishing off his career, so people can be re-mad after almost a year.
Yeah, so Levshinov, like, he doesn't look bad in the model. He actually looks very, very good. So I'll say that. It's not like he's, it's not like a Slavkovsky thing, I'll say, where, he looks at that pick like, oh my God, the value there, like, just doesn't look like it will ever add up. So he doesn't look like that. He actually looks very good. I mean, there's not a lot of comparables that kind of look like him because he went from, essentially equivalency, I think, in the mid-teens in his pre-draft year and then to something in the 30s in his draft year, which is phenomenal. Like, that is, that's what, like, Hedman did. That's what, I think Rasmus Dahlin kind of looks similar, a little bit younger, but, like, it's pretty rare to have that profile. So he looks very good. So I'll preface it with that. And then this season, he was in the NCAA when he had his draft year. So he came over to North America and did really well. And then he transitioned to the AHL after, I think he was injured for a bit there, but basically went to the AHL, and he did not have the season I would have hoped. So that's a bit concerning, but I mean, I'm still really optimistic on him. I mean, he's a second overall guy. He's big, he's strong, but he just didn't have like the production I would have thought that somebody like that would have. Like, I thought he would kind of like be like dominating down there, even though he's only 18. Like, he had that look about him. So that's a bit concerning, but I'm not like overly concerned yet. But if he does essentially the same thing again this year, then I'll be a bit more concerned, a lot more concerned. And so you compare him to Demidov, who I've been talking about a lot, and he looks like these certain superstars that I referenced earlier, like with Hagens. Like, he had the big season in his pre-draft year, and then the huge season in the KHL in his draft year, and then continued that on to his post-draft year, where just a phenomenal season. And this is exactly what those point per game, like, borderline generational guys look like. They look exactly like him. So yeah, if I'm a Hawks fan, I'm a little disappointed that you didn't get him as well, because, I think he'd be just perfect add-on for Bedard. Like, I think they would have been just phenomenal together. So that part kind of stinks, but Levshinov, I think, is still going to be really, really good, but just different because he's a D-man and not going to be quite that insane, but he'll be more of a two-way driver, hopefully, that can, produce, 50 points a year. Like, ideally, that's kind of what you're looking for, is like basically he's like a 1D, but hoping for a big jump this year for sure, because it was a bit concerning.
One of the guys that the Blackhawks have that a lot of people are interested in for good reason, and I think have some high expectations for because of the year he just had, is Nick Lardis. I have a hard time kind of pinpointing exactly where he kind of projects and pans out, because he's a third-round pick, not the biggest guy, had some pretty good numbers in the OHL, and then this year goes out for 71 goals, which is extremely impressive. Connor Bedard's done it. Like, one of the last guys to do it was John Tavares, but Tavares did that 2 years before his draft year, and Bedard did it in his draft year, whereas Lardis is doing it 2 years after his draft. How do you kind of look at that and weight that, or do you just kind of say, like, well, 70 goals in the OHL is still nothing to scoff at?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's so rare to score that many goals in a single season in any league, like whether it's high school or it's, the BCHL or like the OHL or whatever. Like, that's such a phenomenal amount of scoring that you take note of it for sure. But the thing is, with how the model works, is it's all based on sort of hitting these different thresholds, like I spoke about, and doing it at a younger age. So, I mean, looking at like your comment about Tavares and Bedard, like Bedard, one was a very, like, he was born in June or July or whatever it was. So he was very, very young in his draft year, and he was doing that type of thing. And then Tavares was doing it at 16. He had the exceptional status, that type of thing. Like, that is much more impactful than doing it as one of the oldest people in the OHL. It's a whole different ballgame. So, I mean, Lardis is what, a third or fourth round pick? Like it's still very optimistic trend line for, what he's doing, but he's on the smaller side. He's seeing a nice progression, but I would say like now you probably have like a guy that has a pretty good shot at making the NHL, becoming like a first line like superstar type thing. I would say that's probably I wouldn't be overly optimistic on that, but like now I kind of liken him to like Mangiapane, like I'm a Flames guy, so like when he was coming up, he was making these big jumps like that, but he was never trending to be a star, but you're hopeful that he can be like a middle sixer in the NHL, and that's what I think Lardis is sort of trending for. Even though he got those 70 goals, like when you take it all into account with the model and the numbers and stuff, that's where I'd say he's trending.
All right, before we let you go, we're 2 years into Connor Bedard's career. We have heard all the hot takes about how he's not generational, he was not worth where he was picked, he's overhyped, all this stuff. How does your model project Connor Bedard? Has anything in your mind changed about his NHL future?
No, not really. I still think he's going to be, like I said, he's one of these certain superstars that I speak about. Like he's got those exact numbers where you think every single person that's ever looked like that is basically being like just shy of a point per game superstar or beyond it. So I would say he still gets to that level. I'd say he's kind of having like maybe even slightly better, but kind of like a similar thing to Jack Hughes and how his career sort of started. Jack Hughes looked the exact same way. Jack Hughes was a smaller center trying to find his game. So I think he's still putting up numbers that are pretty remarkable for like a 19 or 20-year-old, but they're just not those McDavid or Ovechkin or Crosby numbers where he's scoring like over 100 points in his first couple seasons. Like he's not quite there, but meanwhile the Blackhawks have like almost nothing for him to work with. So yeah, I'm not really concerned at all. Like I think in his prime you probably have something like Jack Eichel, like a guy who can put up 70 to 80 points most years, shoot above that a few years. And then if he's a little bit more than that, like, I think absolutely he was worth still being drafted first overall that draft. Like who else is sort of, taking him out of that position? Fantilli or Carlson, like he's still well above them. So, yeah, he's not putting up 90 points or 100 points yet, but I wouldn't be too concerned yet. Like I think it's starting to come, and he needs some players to play with that he can, some other elite guys, like hopefully they get one of these elite boards that's coming up in the draft, and then they build something from there.
Yeah, not 100 points yet.
Yeah. People get hung up on the term generational, and I think they expect he should have 100 points his first year and never look back. And it's just not that. The guys you mentioned with Crosby and Ovechkin, and those guys all had a supporting cast with them that helped them get to that level. Where the two most common line mates for Connor Bedard have been Nick Foligno and Philip Kurashev, who I'm assuming do not project as superstars based on your model.
No,
there's still time for Foligno though. Foligno might figure it out.
Play out. Yeah,
I don't think so.
All right, Byron, we appreciate your time, man. Thanks so much. Make sure you're following Byron on Twitter at Byron M. Bader. Are you on Blue Sky? I wasn't able to find your account. Are you over there yet?
I am. I think I might have dropped the M on that one. It might just be at Byron Bader, the Blue Sky ending there, because I think I dropped the M because I can't get it on Twitter. Somebody has stolen my name, even though I'm the only Byron Bader in the world. There's some random account that has my exact name, so I think just be
we'll take care of that for you. All right, man. Thanks so much for your time. We appreciate it. Great stuff.
You bet. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, all right, Byron. That's Byron Bader from Hockey Prospecting. That's really good stuff. I sometimes the science and the math makes you feel better.
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of people that kind of can roll their eyes at the analytics sometimes, and I think the good front offices have a nice balance of both. But when you hear, hey, compared to all these guys throughout this time, like he's right there with Connor Bedard, and I do think that the model is disrespecting Frank Nazar a little bit because he said 40 to 50. Nazar's pace last year was 40 points. If you took his point per game over 82, it is exactly 40. Mm-hmm. So Is he not going to get better from where he's at? I don't think that's likely.
Yeah, I think it's no system is perfect, but I think it gives you a good barometer of like where guys are, where other players similar have gone, and it's kind of more or less like what is like the middle of where these guys could go, because you can always have a guy underperform, overperform, but it's like where is that like middle ground landing spot? So sure, if Nazar's middle ground is a 50-point guy and maybe he trends higher, good. That's pretty good. That's still a player that is important to the Blackhawks moving forward.
All right, let's hit the break zone one more time and come back with your myriad mailbag questions. That's next on CHGO Blackhawks. But just like your favorite team needs a home ice advantage, your home needs a home floor advantage, and Empire Today can help you get it. Empire Today has flooring experts. They're dedicated flooring professionals who focus on flooring every single day. You don't want to depend on big box stores who are just trying to give you the most expensive thing, and they don't go out there and measure it. They don't compare the colors. They don't do any of the stuff that the flooring experts at Empire Today do. That's why Empire Today is your best bet for new floor. Empire Today lives and breathes flooring, and they will be with you every step of the way. It's a whole different ball game. Their flooring experts bring the showroom right to your home so you know it's going to work. Get precise measurements taken and have all your questions answered so there's no surprises. With Empire Today, you get clear upfront and all-inclusive pricing. Plus, you can schedule installation as soon as the next day because nobody likes to wait. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. CHGO listeners can receive a $350 discount when using promo code CHGO. That's right, a $350 discount with the code CHGO. Restrictions apply. Visit empiretoday.com/CHGO for details.
And whatever the sport, the app to bet is Circa Sports Illinois. Circa Sports, it's sports betting the way it should be. Circa Sports Illinois has high betting limits, low holds, and exceptional customer service. You can bet on all your favorite teams in every game this season, whether it's spreads, props, futures, or in-game. Circa Sports has it. You can fund and bet like a pro from anywhere, anytime in Illinois. Download your new bookie today at circasports.com. As always, must be 21 or older, and if you have a gambling problem, you can call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Yes, and now it is time for Taking the Temp, presented by our friends at Four Seasons Heating, Air Conditioning, Plumbing, and Electric. I was actually behind a Four Seasons truck today, and they got the nice logo. It's a leaf, it's a snowflake, it's a water droplet, and is it lightning? It's a cool logo. Good job, Four Seasons, with your logo. Good stuff.
It reflects all four seasons.
Taking the Temp, based on Byron Bader. Joshua in the chat says, I have no hate on the guy, but I feel like he's down on Hawks prospects. This is not him personally. He's taking the data, he's plugging it into a machine.
It's an analytics
and the machine
model.
is spitting out the data, and that's it. There is no team bias on Byron Bader's model, so it is what it is. We'll find out in 3 or 4 years whether or not his system is correct. Visit fourseasonsheatingcooling.com for all their special offers and money-saving coupons. That's fourseasonsheatingcooling.com. All right.
Yeah, I think it's a good mixture of, like, let's take a guy like Cam Robinson, Chris Peters. Let's also get, the analytics side of things with a guy like Byron. And you kind of get a mix and match of, like, what to expect, what you're seeing on the ice, what the numbers say. Like, I think there's a way to have a good mixture of it. And to your point, like, teams investing in the analytical side of things, the Blackhawks have the biggest, if not tied for the biggest staff in the NHL when it comes to their analytics department. So the Hawks, they're invested in it. Like, they are not a eyeball test only team. Like, right. They are looking at things at all different angles. So I think it's a good way to approach the game with any sport. You can't be fully eye test, fully analytics. There's a perfect middle ground between the value of both.
I like getting all of it, and that's how someone asked us on mailbag last week, like, how do you guys break down prospects? Like, what do you use to make your determinations? And right now we're in the information gathering business where you talk to all the experts you can.
Yeah.
You read all the draft guides. You watch the shift by shifts on YouTube. You do the best you can. I mean, look, this is even for professional scouts and professional GMs. It is a bit of a crapshoot with draft picks. You don't know, and you could see every game a guy's ever played, every shift of every game they've played since Pee Wee, right? Since they were putting on skates for the first time, and it doesn't guarantee the outcome on anybody. You just don't know, so it's tough. So the more of these we can get, the better. And I think we want to give you, our listeners, kind of the eye test, the analytics, and everything in between, so we can all draw our best conclusions. And I will say that no one has drawn any conclusion yet. There is no consensus who the Hawks should pick. I think if we were to put up to a vote, all things being equal, if the Hawks had number one, I think Michael Misa would be the overwhelming favorite.
He'd be the favorite, yeah.
But beyond him,
are you saying you're saying if they had number one?
Yeah, I'm saying I think most Hawks fans would take Michael Misa. If Michael Misa comes to the Hawks, everybody's thrilled. It feels that way.
Yeah.
But beyond him, I think everyone's kind of like Frundell, Higgins, Desnoyers. Like there's Martone, right? There's and it's that all feels pretty even. I feel like Misa's here, and the other 3 or 4 are like just jumping for space in between.
Yeah, we've said it a few times. Like it really feels like whoever they come away with at number 3, or if somehow they get Misa, whether they move up or he falls, whatever. Whoever they come away with at number 3, there's going to be people that are going to say, it wasn't my guy. But I don't think there's enough there to be like, they completely whiffed on this pick.
Yeah.
Like there was last year where people said Lev Shinov, instant bust, on the draft floor. So I think this year, and it's fun that there's like 5 options that all make sense. If you go back and watch our mini pods of our draft profiles, like all these guys fit something that the Hawks need. Whether Matthew Schaefer, I think is off the table, but all of the top forwards, like they all have something that fits what the Hawks need in different ways. So I feel like I have guys that I like more, but none of them I'm going to be like, ugh, come on.
I don't think so. Unless there's like a big off the board kind of
unless
thing,
they reach extremely, which I still find it hard to believe that outside of the top 6-7 players, the Hawks are going to reach out of that group at 3.
All right, let's get to some mailbag questions here. We had a ton, so thank you for those.
We'll
try to get through them.
We're probably going to still have a ton.
A little more quickly than we do on mailbag. We like to stretch the legs on Mailbag Monday. Let's try to plow through some of these bad boys if we can here. All right.
We start with the longest one.
Start with the long one. Hosa Hawk says, mailbag question. Doug Wilson was one of my favorite Blackhawks defensemen of all time until he offer sheeted Hjalmarsson when he was GM of the Sharks. I know hockey is a business, but you think it's morally responsible for a GM to offer sheet another player on an opposing team. What do you think KD's perspective is on this issue? Let's inflict some pain on Stanbo and offer sheet Bouch, yeah.
Bouchard.
Bouchard. Thank you. I was like, Boucher? Yeah, Bouchard. Thanks for all the hard work you guys do, bringing us up to date on Blackhawks information.
Thank you, Hosa Hawk.
You know what? F that. Make your team better. And if you have to be ruthless to do it, by all means do it. I don't have any problem with that. And what Doug Wilson did was he said, I want Nicholas Hjalmarsson or Antti Niemi. I'm going to put the Hawks in a position where they have to choose between one of the two. The Hawks correctly chose Nicholas Hjalmarsson, so he got Antti Niemi. Mm-hmm. That is good general managing. That's what you want. You don't want your GM to be like, well, I don't want to really hurt anyone's feelings. F that, dude. Your job is to win. If you do not win Stanley Cups, you will not be the general manager. That is your job. And if it pisses some people off, so be it. Be the villain. I love the Blackhawks as the villain. Let's go. Offer sheet people. Put other GMs in uncomfortable situations. Get them in cap trouble. All the sort of things. Be competitive. You want your team to play competitive? General manage competitively as well.
Yeah, I think last year with the Blues and the Oilers going after and getting Broberg and Dylan Holloway, you see what the impacts those guys had for the Blues instantly. I think changed the perception and probably the decorum around offer sheets and the strategies around it, around NHL GM. So yeah, be aggressive.
All right, next. Good job. We were short on that one. This from Learn to Hate Me. Wow, look at that. Whoa, I figured that out quick.
Nice.
After the Pagnota rumor that the Sharks want to trade to number 1 to pick Schaefer, what do you think the difference will be in value to trade to number 2 rather than number 1, assuming the Sharks trade for 1 and then we trade with the Islanders for 2?
So
basically if that's the case, so Sharks trade up to 1, so now you want to go to 2 instead of 3. I would give 3 and 25 to move up to 2. Because the assumption is the Sharks are taking Schaefer. You really want Michael Misa. You don't want to give the Islanders a chance to do that. I would sacrifice a 25th pick to do that. I know it sounds like a lot, but if you're bullish that Michael Misa is the one.
If all it takes is the 25th pick.
You're going up 1 spot.
I mean, it comes down to what the Islanders want to do as well. They could set their price tag super high, and the Hawks are either have to match it or you sit there at 3 and watch the Islanders take Michael Misa. If all it took was the other first-round pick, I would do it. Because I think if it's for sure Sharks are getting Schaefer at 1 in this scenario, and you can and Matthew Darsh and Kyle Davidson are having a conversation, and he says, well, if you want to give a 25, we'll move back 1 more spot. I would do it. I would absolutely do it. Because then you get who you assume the Blackhawks have at the top of their board is Michael Misa, because it seems like he'd be the top forward for pretty much anybody you ask.
I mean, that's the only guy you're trading up to get. Let's be honest.
Yeah. So Hawks don't trade up for James Higgins.
Right. Because if you don't get Higgins, you get Misa.
It's very likely the only guy that's not going to fall to 3, or the only guys that wouldn't fall to 3 are Schaefer and Misa. So if all it is the 25th pick, sure, I would do it.
Me too. Would you throw in a third next year or something? Some kind of...
No. All it is the 25th pick, then I'm doing it.
Somebody in the chat a long time ago, so you don't have to look for it, Katie, said 325 and Lardis.
No.
Oh,
why? No.
No. That's it. Jack said it. Trade Lardis number 3 and 25 for 1.
No, I wouldn't do it.
If this was a Celebrini Bedard type number 1,
right,
then we're talking. But
yeah, Misa's the top forward.
Yeah,
but he's not at that level.
Right. All right. Got to be quick. Got to be fast. Scott, Iowa says, first question as a diehard on Discord. Thank you, Scott. With the Stanley Cup Finals series starting on Wednesday, does it make you feel excited remembering the dynasty and looking forward to the future, or more sad, frustrated, hopeless because there's such a wide gap between the season the Blackhawks had and how the Oilers and Panthers play in their lineup?
It's making me feel older. Every year that goes by between the 10, 13, and 15 cups is just kind of feels further away from my youth, my 20s.
Here's what I'll say. I think that the years leading up to success are a lot of fun. The development years, the prospects coming up and thriving and seeing that happen, it makes the payoff so much more meaningful. Mm-hmm. And I know, when the Dynasty Hawks won, a lot of people jumped on when the Hawks got good, and they had every excuse to do that because they sucked for a decade before they got good. So, and they had no direction.
And they weren't accessible.
There was no plan. There was no reason to be a Hawks fan back then unless you were mentally ill like me. But for the 2,000 of us that remained Hawks fans through the 2000s, the Hawks winning and seeing Keith and Seabrook and Crawford and Hjalmarsson and Bufflin and all these prospects that if you squint hard and these guys really pan out, maybe the Hawks can be great. And then you get Kane and Taves, and then you get Hossa. And the realization when Hossa joins the team, oh my God, other guys are seeing this too. And even to a lesser extent, Brian Campbell choosing the Blackhawks over other teams was oh my God, this is a thing. Yeah. And they could legitimately win. And then the runs to those are so much more meaningful when there's a little bit of suffering before it. And I always think of before the Cubs won a World Series, like 2013, 2014, whatever year it was, you'd find like Arizona Fall League highlights of Chris Bryant from a scratchy cell phone, like just hitting a bomb, and like Javier Baez making a great play with the Iowa Cubs, and like you start to like you're following these prospects and how they're doing at the lower levels. So when they all get here, and then the ultimate is realized, whether it results in a championship or not, it is so much more rewarding to have suffered through it to get to have it pay off. So I actually that's why I'm really looking forward to next season, because I feel like next season is a bunch of the kids are here, a bunch of the kids are ready. We're sort of eliminating the gap filler type veterans and maybe adding some veterans that could be here when the team's good again. I'm down for it, man. I'm excited about this time, because when they get good again, and they're going to, it's going to be that much more enjoyable.
A wise woman once said, "It's the climb."
Who said that?
Miley Cyrus.
Oh.
Hannah Montana. One of the two of them. Yeah.
We do have some breaking news.
Yes. Break it.
The Chicago Steel will call Fifth Third Arena their home. That is the new development today. That is very exciting. That is from Phil Thompson of the Chicago Tribune. I don't believe it is starting next year. I think it is starting in 2026-27. But the Chicago Steel moving their games from Geneva to Fifth Third Arena. That is exciting news. And their new head coach, if you missed it, Scott Gomez of the Devils and Canadiens, really good player who I always thought would be a Blackhawk. He's their head coach. The Wirtz family owns the Steel now. So very cool. That'll be fun. I got to tell you, Steel games are a lot of fun. And to have them right down the street from us here is going to be really cool. I've been working on trying to get Scott Gomez on the show, because that would be cool.
Yeah.
Hopefully now with this announcement, we can make that happen. But part of the Fifth Third Arena expansion announcement today is that the Chicago Steel will be playing their games in Fifth Third Arena starting in 2026-27. Very cool. Good job by Phil Thompson to scoop that.
Yeah. That's Chicago Steel, or now the Chicago Steel officially.
They're not the Geneva Steel.
In Chicago.
Like the Rosemont Wolves.
Chicago teams play in Chicago, not Arlington Heights.
Oh, unless your football field is a dump and not making you any money.
And the Chicago Fire don't play in Bridgeview.
That's true.
They play in Chicago.
All right.
That's my take. No, that's really cool. That's cool. I think, when they did the expansion, the Steel moving in was something that, you think maybe could happen. Expansion of the PWHL, maybe a Chicago team ends up at Fifth Third. Like, it's cool that the Steel are going to be moving in there, and that whole unit is expanding, and just a higher level of facility in the city for hockey is just it's great. It's good to see. So very cool.
Hopefully someday this leads to a PWHL team coming to Chicago too.
Maybe eventually.
But I don't know if there's certain capacity. There has to be a certain amount of people allowed. So
the last I remember,
it might not be big enough at Fifth Third.
Last I remember, them talking about the capacity of this arena was going to be was either 1,500 or 2,500, and I remember the PWHL was kind of saying minimum should be 4,000 to 5,000. So I don't know if that's in the cards exactly, but we'll see.
Play them at the UC.
Yeah, I mean,
why not?
I'm not opposed to that.
Fill it up. All right, question next. This from G-Bubs. He said, Jay, this one's for you. Oh. I also hate the effing slingshot power play BS. I do, however, understand having 4 forwards and a D, but considering the Hawks have 3 potential power play 1 players in the pipeline, and maybe Schaefer if chaos reigns at the draft, why not a power play with 2 defensemen? What are the pros and cons of 1D versus 2D on the power play? I don't think there's specifically. I think it's more personnel based. And you didn't really have a lot of offensive defensemen on the roster last year that you would trust on the power play. Now, with Rinzel and Levshinov, you saw some at the end of the year. If I'm not mistaken, you saw 2 defensemen on the power play a few times. But if you've got 4 puck-moving defensemen, then you could do it. I think part of it too is they like Bedard on that left point to just kind of be like a rover and circle through the zone and find open ice for himself. So it's always kind of a rotating thing. But I don't think there's any advantage or disadvantage aside from personnel. Like if you had 6 Connor Murphys on your blue line, you're probably not going to throw him on the power play just because he's a defenseman, right? You want to have guys that are suited for the power play. And now with the guys coming up that they have, Renzel, Levshinov, etc., they will have more offensive-minded defensemen. And I do think that we might see Vlasic on the power play a little more next year too, because once Seth Jones went, he tried to add a little bit of offense to his game and didn't look totally out of place. So, yeah, I think it's more about personnel than philosophy. I don't think anyone's being like, we have to have 4 forwards and a defenseman on the power play. It's personnel.
Yeah, I mean, if you have 2 guys that are high-level offensive defensemen, there's nothing to say you can't have them both on the power play. We've seen power plays with 5 forwards. I mean, it just comes down to what fits best. And I think maybe not this year, but as more of these young defensemen become full-time NHL players, then yeah, I think you might have that viable option of like, you know, Levshinov and Renzel or Korchinski and Renzel or whoever it ends up being playing out there at the same time. And that opens up, you know, your second unit could have, you know, you don't have to overload the top unit with your top forwards. You might have 2 full units of you know, forward talent that make both your top power play unit and your second unit as dangerous.
Before we get to more questions, I want to tell you about a couple cool things we got going on. The Stanley Cup Ball Nowhere bonus is happening right now at promotion.allcitynetwork.com. Here's how this works. You make a purchase at our merch shop, and you make a pick on our Ball Nowhere bonus, either Oilers or Panthers, who's going to win the cup. You will win a gift card equal to your entire merch order. So let's say you spend $100 at the merch shop, and you pick the Oilers to win the cup, and the Oilers win the cup, you are getting a $100 gift card to the All City Network store. That's how it works. The deadline to enter is Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central. Again, the website promotion.allcitynetwork.com/all, ALL. Sign up there, buy some stuff, enter the Ball Nowhere bonus, pick the cup winner, and if you're right, you will get the value of your order in a gift card. That is a really cool promotion we've got going on.
Yeah.
And you should also know,
prove that you know ball.
Yes, that the All City Draft Guide is out, put together by Charlie O'Connor of PHLY Flyers. The Diehard mock draft is available for you diehards. So if you want access to that, if you're a diehard, you got it. If you want to become a diehard, allchgo.com is the place to go. Good stuff. And he's got the Hawks taking Caleb Denoyer. Just do it for me.
Denoyer.
I'm tongue-tied.
Yeah. Yeah, and if you don't like that,
yell at Charlie.
You can yell at Charlie.
Yeah.
You can find him on Twitter and yell at him.
And yell at Charlie Romeliotis too, just for the fun of it.
Yeah, why not? What's Charlie's? Charlie Ocon. Yeah. Go yell at him. Say, I disagree. And wave your finger.
Yeah. There you go. So good stuff. Do it. Check it out. Okay, let's get a couple more in before we wrap up here. What do we got, Katie? P3 Arizona mailbag question. This might have been missed. Fix your grammar, P3 Arizona. Jeez.
Gosh.
He's on all the time. It's fine. That's a friend. Can you explain the process of how an offer sheet works? In recent shows, the discussions about Nye's suggestion, Davidson has to give Toronto certain draft picks. Who and what determines what the Hawks need to give up when it comes to an offer sheet? Thanks again for a great show. So basically it works by how much you're offering.
Mm-hmm.
So if it's in the $8 million range, let's see, I got it right here. So let's say the Hawks offer sheet, Matthew Nye, somewhere between $7.02 million and $9.36 million. The cost is a first, a second, and a third. However, they have to be your own picks. Mm-hmm. They can't be draft picks that you've acquired via trade. They have to be draft picks that belong to you. So if the Hawks were to offer sheet Matthew Nyes and he signs with the Hawks and the Leafs don't match, the Leafs would get the Hawks 2026 first, 2026 second, and 2026 third. that is a shot at Gavin McKenna.
Oh, yeah.
So that is something to keep in mind. It's not this draft. It is the following draft.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to give up a first, second, and third in 2026 to get him. If you think you can get him for 4.68 to 7.02, it's a first and a third in 2026. That's what you're looking at price-wise to get Matthew Nyes. So do you want to give up the chance to get Gavin McKenna to get Matthew Nyes? I don't know. That's a lot.
Well,
it's a big risk.
Yeah, and I think, with the offer sheets, the other side of it is more than likely someone like that, a team is going to try and do what they can to keep a player like that. And I think in the Nyes situation, where it seems like Marner is out, Tavares is going to, at the very least, take a significant pay cut and stay in Toronto. They're going to have the money to match what the offer sheets might be, unless they get ridiculously wild, which if you go above that 9.2, it's 2 firsts, which I think is this year and then the 2027.
You get a pick between, it's 2 firsts in the next 3 drafts starting in 2026.
There you go. Yeah.
So you can do, it's definitely the first in 2026. Oh, I wonder if you could pick.
Conditional?
Because it says, this is via Puckpedia, 2 first-round picks in the next 3 drafts. So the Hawks wanted him at 9.5, Matthew Nyes. And then they said,
I would imagine the team losing the player picks.
I don't know. That's a good. We'll try to figure that out. But I'd be more tempted to. I would give them the 2027 first, and the 2028 first, and then the 2026 second, third. That is more tempting to me than giving up the chance at Gavin McKenna, because I still think even with Matthew Nyes, if they improve 10, 15, even 20 points, they're still going to be in a lottery.
Right.
So,
which again, if it seems too good to be true, probably is.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, that's best way that I think we can explain offer sheets in the time given.
Puckpedia.com/offer-sheet-tracker is the site if you want to find it.
Yeah, Puckpedia is a great.
It also lays out which teams actually have the pieces available to do it, because it's not every team.
Also useful.
Yes. All right.
We
Let's
hit
do
one more?
One more? I think so. Chris Mearsman says that draft can't get here quick enough, along with free agency. What would you think of a line like this? Offer sheet Nyes, draft Misa, pair them with Bedard, Nyes, Misa, and Bedard. That sounds great.
I think that sounds great.
I'm very much in on that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
If only we're that easy.
We could probably get another one in since that one was so
short.
short.
One more quick one.
Yeah.
Let's see.
What's we got a fun one? Yeah,
they're all fun. This is all fun.
All right, Jester says favorite Simpsons character and or moment.
I love anything that has to do with Ralph Wiggum.
Oh, he's pretty great.
He's so funny.
That's a second from Katie.
I love it.
2 minutes. All right, well, never mind me.
What?
She gave 2. I thought she was saying me too.
Oh,
I thought she was agreeing.
I was saying 2 minutes in show.
Do you have any thoughts on The Simpsons at all?
I'm gonna break your heart. I've never watched The Simpsons.
No, you're
Yeah.
too young.
I don't know if I'm too young. I just never got into it. Matt is losing his mind right now, I'm sure. But oh well.
What year?
All right, do you know who Mr. T is?
No, she doesn't know anything about The Simpsons.
Do you know who Jeremy Piven is?
I didn't until he was here.
Okay, see, we're comparing with Sarah, who doesn't know who Mr. T or Jeremy Piven are, but we looked at it yesterday. I looked at it yesterday. Old School is 21 years old.
Yeah, Old School was in like 03.
So what was Sarah, 2?
So I would have been 6.
Yeah.
So you were born in 97.
I was born in 97.
So she was born after the prime of The Simpsons.
Of course.
Yeah.
Most people were.
Yeah. So she wouldn't really know.
First 12 seasons, you can't beat them.
What about the next 30?
Yeah, well, not as good. I will say this. My favorite scene from The Simpsons ever is when Homer has to go into witness protection, and they're trying to explain to him that his name is Mr. Thompson, and he's just not getting it. So they basically start okay, you're now known as Mr. Thompson. You understand? Yes, sir. Hello, Mr. Thompson. And then Homer's just staring at him blankly. And then they do a time lapse of the guy's he's got a cigarette lit, his sleeves are rolled up, there's Chinese food on a table. He goes, okay, last time we're gonna try this. When I say hello, Mr. Thompson, you smile and nod. Got it. hello, Mr. Thompson. Or just doesn't respond again. It is my favorite bit in the history of The Simpsons. It goes on. Yes, I think he's talking to you. Yes, that is one of my favorite all-time Simpsons bits. It's great. And the entire monorail episode. Any of the episodes that Conan O'Brien wrote are my favorites because Conan O'Brien is my Venn diagram of comedy.
Didn't he only write like
not many?
3?
But they were really good ones.
Yeah.
All right. That was great.
Good stuff.
Good stuff. Good questions. We'll be back tomorrow.
Stanley Cup final game.
Yes, finally. Good Lord. Everyone's healthy at least. Except Zach Hyman, who's out for the year.
Yeah, as healthy as they can be.
Yeah, we'll preview the Cup final, and we'll probably have a little more detail on the Fifth Third Arena expansion. Maybe have some renderings to share and stuff like that. And still efforting Scott Gomez. So we'll see what happens. And a reminder, even though it's 8 days away, next Wednesday, we will talk to Alex Vlasic. So set a reminder to tune into that show. We'll talk about the World Championships, Jeff Blashill, everything that's happened this summer so far. So don't miss it. But we'll talk to you tomorrow at 2 on the CHGO Blackhawks Podcast.
We all silly like the mayor.